Hello, Mr. Montalvo here, U.S. History, and today we're taking a look at Unit 3, Lesson 3, Day 4, the War of 1812. And so our objective for today is to examine the events of the early nation, including the War of 1812, in terms of testing the strength of the Constitution. That's the whole focus here within this lesson, seeing how within its first few years, there were multiple challenges that the new government and that the new Constitution of the United States faced. Now, in order to understand some of the topics we're going to discuss today, one important key vocabulary or key term is imprisonment. Now, it kind of sounds like imprisonment. And so there's a reason for that because they have almost a similar meaning. Now, imprisonment is the act of taking men or women, people, into a military or naval force by compulsion or by force without any notice. This is involuntary service. So in June 1812, President James Monroe asked Congress to declare war on Great Britain. And the House followed by voting in favor. So they voted to go to war with Great Britain. Here we can see the list of the various states that agreed. Take a look and notice which states were the most in favor of going into war. So the Navy only had 16 ships to fight against the British Navy. In addition, the American naval officers were inexperienced and had very few regular troops. Volunteers were requested and were offered $124 and 360 acres in newly acquired territory in order to kind of promote or encourage people to join the war effort. Now, the causes of the War of 1812 include the British attempts to restrict U.S. trade, the Royal Navy's imprisonment of American seamen, and America's desire to expand its territory. These are seen as the three major causes of the War of 1812. Now, most Western and Southern congressmen supported the war, while Federalists, especially New Englanders who relied heavily on trade with Great Britain, accused war advocates of using the excuse of maritime rights to promote their expansionist ideas. Now, many who were pro-war did want to take a look at incorporating Canada, British Canada, into the United States. And so kind of triggering this war would be a way for them to enter into Canada and possibly incorporate and expand not just west as they were doing with the Louisiana Purchase, but now north into Canada. So the British were landlocked in a battle with Napoleon and could not spare many troops to fight the United States. Now, this is a very bold attempt by the United States, and they kind of knew what they were doing. If you remember from our previous discussion, Napoleon is going all throughout Europe, taking over various areas and incorporating into the new French Empire. And Great Britain are the ones leading the fight against him. So they understand that that the British are occupied. The British Navy were able to block American ports. The American fleet was so small that they were unable to stop the British ships. And we already understand and know the negative effects of a blockade, preventing the importing and exporting of goods and people as well. Now, in order to strike at Great Britain, U.S. forces immediately attacked Canada, then a British colony. On August 16, 1812, the United States suffered a humiliating defeat by Sir Isaac Brock and a Shawnee leader, Tecumseh. Commodore Oliver Hazard Perry's brilliant success in the Battle of Lake Erie in September 1813 placed the Northwest Territory firmly under the control of America. Now, Napoleon's army is defeated in April of 1812, and Britain was able to turn its then full attention to the war effort in North America. And as a result, a large number of troops arrived in the United States. the British forces raided the Chesapeake Bay and moved up and into the United States capital, capturing Washington, D.C. And on August 24th, 1814, they burned government buildings, including the Capitol and the White House. As mentioned, Dolly Madison, the president's wife, snuck back in with some important papers and a portrait of George Washington. In those papers were the original Declaration of Independence, and they were saved due to her heroic efforts. Now, on September 13th, 1814, Baltimore's Fort McHenry withstood 25 hours of bombardment, constant attacks, or cannon attacks, cannon fire, by the British Navy. The following morning, the fort soldiers hoisted an enormous flag, and at the site that inspired Francis Scott Key to write the poem which he entitled The Star-Spangled Banner. American troops were able to repulse or push back the British invasion in New York, in Baltimore, and New Orleans, boosting national confidence and fostering a spirit of patriotism. Now, Britain moved for an armistice after the failure of the assault on Baltimore. The Treaty of Ghent brought an end to the War of 1812. The United States gave up its demands to end imprisonment, while Britain promised to leave Canada's borders unchanged and abandon the efforts to create an Indian state in the Northwest. Now, it's interesting, according to John Quincy Adams, a future president, the son of John Adams, nothing was adjusted and nothing was settled with this war. And we can see this with the Treaty of Ghent. The War of 1812, however, is called the Second War for American Independence, for the most part, because the British government had never really fully respected the United States as a free nation after the Revolution. However, after the War of 1812, they began to see the United States as a truly powerful and independent nation. On January 8, 1815, unaware that peace was concluded, British forces mounted an attack on New Orleans, only to be met with a defeat at the hands of future President Andrew Jackson and his army. The war's outcome boosted national confidence or nationalism and encouraged the growth of the spirit of American expansionism, encouraging Americans to move further west and expand their territory. Now, attached to this is a primary source document for your analysis known as the Monroe Doctrine, written by James Monroe. So I encourage you to take a look at that because it will inform future discussions on this topic. And just to close up for today, try to explain the major causes of the War of 1812 and what some of its effects were, and then in general, was the War of 1812 worth fighting for to begin with? I'm interested to know your thoughts. Take care.